90.3 WHPC. This is from the press box, and on the phone with us is a guy who could be called Mr. Met. He was with the Mets for 18 seasons. Never had any other team. Had many records, top records. He's still in the top 10 for almost everything with records with the New York Mets, hitting, RBIs, and everything. Our guest today is Ed Kranepool. Ed, welcome to From the Press Box. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on.
And your book is called The Last Miracle, My 18-Year Journey with the Amazing New York Mets, written by you and Gary Kashak. Is that how you say his name?
That's correct.
And it's published by Triumph Books. And one thing about this book, Ed, it's blunt in many places. This is there's some people you just call out in the book, which you don't expect that sometimes with these types of autobiographies.
Well, you just tell it like it is, really. I mean, if someone asks you a question, you want to answer it. You want to be straight and forward, and some people have to be accountable for what happened. You're talking about baseball. You're talking about making trades, and whether you think they're good or not, you want to give your opinion of it. And, a lot of the stuff that went on in the Met organization was pretty negative in the beginning, and that's why you lose 100 games.
Right.
When you're a bad ball club, somebody's got to take the responsibility for making those deals. It's just like what's going on now. The ball club is struggling. There were a lot of bad trades made this year, and things didn't work out. Somebody's accountable.
I agree. I want to go to something. We interviewed Cleon Jones about 6 months ago, and he talked about the old-timers game from last year. Now, you were there also, and you were also there when it was decided that Willie Mays' number was going to be retired. What do you remember about the old-timers game? There hadn't been one in a long time. It was, I thought, very emotional as a Mets fan. I want to know how you felt.
I thought it was great to bring back all the players. Steve Cohen has done a great job, public relations-wise, trying to reunite the players because the ball club had lost, really lost being in touch with the players. They really didn't do a whole lot with the old-timers, under the Wilpons, and it got strayed away. But now he brought it back last year. I thought he was going to do something this year with the 73 club, but I guess he had other intentions, and he thought possibly the effect of being a good ball club and being in contention, they were going to be in it the whole year. They didn't need as much public relations, so they didn't do anything this year. That was a little disappointing, but you know what? He's doing a great job. He's putting his money where his mouth is. He's trying to build the ball club, and it was just a bad season this year.
Has he approached you like for just sit down advice? Say, Ed, you've been around baseball all your life. What do you think? Has he approached you on anything?
No, he hasn't approached me, but I've been there a couple of times with him. I've been in his company. He's very approachable if you want to go up there and solicit him and do some things with him. I guess you could. But, he's got enough headaches right now. He's trying to run a ball club. He's really got some trouble because, the Met fans are tough. They know the game. They know what they're doing. They like to win. Losing was fun maybe in the early years for the fans. But from the player standpoint and the ball club standpoint, they want to win. So this is a professional team, and he spent a lot of money this year. It's disappointing that, they're going to be watching the playoffs. They should have been in it. I thought they had the ball club to do it, but nothing gelled. They started out with a tough year. They lose their relief pitcher, the number one pitcher in baseball in the bullpen, and that just created a problem early on, and nobody really could fill the roles.
Right.
Ed, just in terms of what did happen with the Mets this season, I know a lot of older Mets players have been asked to analyze what they think happened. But I want to ask you, do you think they made the right moves at the trade deadline?
Well, I don't think they did a whole lot at the trade deadline. I think by that time it was too late really to recover. I think, they were many, many games back. I think maybe he shouldn't have quit right at that point. I think he probably could have lasted another 2 weeks and see, because they were only 9 games out. But you know what? He had to take an economic choice. He spent a lot of money for some pitching, and they were hurt early on, and they never could get back on track, and they struggled. But, you know, it's just a lot of players didn't fit in. It just didn't work out. And, you know, they're closer to the situation than I am. I mean, I'm in Florida and taking it easy. I can't see what's going on in the clubhouse. Somebody has to be a leader. Somebody has to take charge, you know, and they just didn't have the right mix of players. And, you know, it's tough. Money doesn't buy a pennant. You've got to put players together that can work together, fill in spots, do certain things. You know, they were moving players in and out. They were changing the rotation in the pitching staff. They had some injuries. They, you know, as far as the lineup, they had a lot of different lineups. They weren't settled, and just nothing went right this year. So it was a tough year, but knowing, you know, Steve, he's going to spend his money and they're going to have a good ball club.
Yeah,
for sure.
I want to talk about after Joan Payson died. I remember I still am a Met fan, but as a kid, we always blamed M. Donald Grant for the disaster of what happened to the Mets afterwards. In your book, you don't blame M. Donald Grant, you blame Joe McDonald, which is the first time I've ever heard that.
He was the general manager. He's making the trades. And Donald Grant was a stockbroker, very professional in what he did. And, you know, he took all the flack, but he didn't know the players. He didn't know a half a dozen players, you know, by name or you know, just by seeing them. He didn't know who they were. How's he going to make a trade? It's just like myself after all these years. To be in the general manager's position, you got to know the players and be able to wheel and deal with those guys. Grant didn't know those guys. Right. He wasn't making the trades. He got the flack because he was the boss, but he didn't make the trades. And so he got all the bad publicity about making trades. The guy that made the trades and was responsible was Joe McDonald. He killed the minor league system. He got rid of all those players, and then came up to the major league level as the general manager and made the Seaver trade and all those trades. I mean, he unloaded the whole ball club right in a row. You know, in 2 weeks, the Mets went from, you know, a contending club down to the basement again. Of course, the last 5 or 6 years, he couldn't do anything right. He never was able to build that ball club, and tried. Free agency came about, and he started giving out long-term contracts to players that didn't deserve them. And you know what? Became a bad ball club again, and then, unfortunately, the Wilpons had to rebuild, and they had to spend all their money, and that was the big problem. But people blame the wrong guy. Grant was a businessman. He would shake your hand, say hello to you, look above your locker to see your name. He knew a half a dozen guys. He didn't know the rest of the ball club.
Okay, because, you know, as a kid, you know, he was sort of more of a face of the Mets at the time after Joan Payson died. What do you remember about Joan Payson as an owner, as a person? I mean, she was one of the few, still, women owners of a sports team, especially a baseball team. What do you remember about it? She seemed like a very cool lady.
She was a great woman. She was like your grandmother and took good care of everybody. She loved baseball. She loved the Giants. She loved Willie Mays. That was her favorite player. She brought him back to New York to end his career here. And that created a little bit of a controversy, you know, in redoing his number, right? You know, retiring his number. But he still was a great player with us. He did a lot of things for the club, helped the club in the playoffs in '73. You know, worked with all the guys, did what he could, but he was 40-something years of age, and he's not the player that we all knew as the great Say Hey Willie. I mean, he was tremendous. You know, with the Giants, but with the Mets, he was a different player. But she was wonderful. She would be at the ballpark to root for the ball club. She never got any publicity because she came out right in the beginning and said she's not, you know, managing the ball club. She's not going in the front office to make a deal. She never had any intention of doing so. So Grant said, well, I'm the boss. You know, I'm the president of the club. And he took the flack, but he wasn't making trades. I don't think he made one trade.
Right.
You know, he wouldn't know it. He wouldn't know any player. but he was there, and somebody had to take the flack. And if you don't want to stand up underneath him, who gets the trouble, who gets all the bad publicity is Donald Grant. And he never stood up. He took it. He was strong enough to take it, but you know what? He didn't have to do that. He was very content in his office in Thornstock in Manhattan, down on Broadway,
right
there, on the Wall Street. He had no reason to take all that publicity.
We're talking with Ed Kranepool. He is the author. His book is called The Last Miracle, My 18-Year Journey with the Amazing New York Mets. And we know what the first miracle would be. What's the last miracle? Is that your health issues that got fixed?
Well, I had health issues, no question about it. I was very fortunate to get a kidney. I had a wonderful donor that volunteered to supply a kidney for me, and I got that. But I also had a situation right at the end when I moved to Florida. My wife got sick. My wife got pancreatic cancer, and
oh, wow.
She survived it. I mean, which was wonderful. I thought when we moved to Florida, things were going to be hunky-dory and everything was going to be fun. But when you go in the hospital and you're told that was the biggest problem. So here we were for the first 6 months of our move to Florida, going to the hospitals every day to take care of it. And we had a wonderful surgeon down in Miami. He took care of my wife. He promised me that he was going to help her, and he was able to do it. The guy was wonderful. We had a beautiful set of hands, and he did surgery, shrunk the tumors, and we had to cut them out, and did a great job. And, she survived, and she's doing well. She's one of the less than 10% that survived it. So I said, I got to write about this stuff. This is my last miracle, and I'm going to finish it right here.
Right,
and to say the numbers for pancreatic cancer are not good. So
yeah,
that's incredible.
Usually, you have to find it early on.
Yeah,
yeah, we were very lucky, and we did what we had to do. And I wouldn't want to get that diagnosis because you know what, it's not good at all. It's a 3-month sentence.
Yeah, for sure.
So now we're 2 years into it, and my wife's feeling well. And we're looking forward to coming back to New York this week, 2 weeks.
Nice.
Right.
Ed, I want to ask you about what might have been the first miracle. And for me, something that will never happen in baseball again. And that would have been you playing Major League Baseball at the age of 17 and actually getting your first Major League hit that season. Can you tell me what it was like being a 17-year-old on a Major League roster?
Well, myself, I signed with the Mets right after high school. 2 days after graduating, I signed a contract right away and went out to California. My opening night in the major leagues, Sandy Koufax happens to be pitching, and he pitches a no-hitter and strikes out 13. And I go to Casey. I said, this is going to be a long career. This is what it's like. Welcome to the big leagues. And
exactly.
He was great to play for in the beginning. He loved the young players. He worked with us all the time. He never did anything to embarrass us. We all made mistakes, especially myself at 17, learning how to play the game, because mentally and physically you got to develop to get to the major leagues. I was just forced right into it and had to jump into it in a bad ball club. And the fans in New York, wanted the Mets to do well, and they wanted me to lead them. And you're not going to lead a major league club into a pennant. One player is not good enough, not strong enough. Willie Mays couldn't lead a ball club into the pennant. He's got to surround himself with some good players, and the Mets didn't have it. So we struggled for a few years, but what we did was in 7 years, we developed a good farm system.
Yep.
We developed young players, brought them up, consistently every year. We brought a couple up and developed a club and won a pennant in 7 years, which was tremendous. So we did a great job. We had a great farm director. We had Whitey Herzog down there doing the right job. People in the right position in the early years. Johnny Murphy was the vice president of the ball club. He made a lot of the trades, general manager. We had the people in the right position developing the young kids. And then we put people in the wrong position. And once you do that and they're controlling all the trades, if you look at them, we didn't make we made one good trade, In 1973, we traded Felix Millan for George Stone. Felix Millan and George Stone to the Mets for a couple of players that never panned out, and they helped us win the pennant in 73. But other than that, the Mets didn't make a good trade. They had, terrible front office. They were making some awful trades, getting the worst of all the trades. Now, somebody's got to be responsible for that. Who's pulling the trades off? The general managers. So look at the ones that developed most of the guys and made the trades and gave the players away. We had some great pitchers that we gave up. Jim Bibby was a good pitcher with Pittsburgh. He won 18, 19 games. Then up in Montreal, you had Renko. We gave him away. We had a lot of young kids.
Don't forget Nolan Ryan.
Oh, how about Nolan Ryan? There was a trade. There was so many guys that, let these guys get away. We had more pitching than anybody in baseball, and we gave these kids away. And you know what? We never got them back. We had for a couple of years, we had a good staff. One guy got hurt. Gentry got hurt. He would have been outstanding. But we made a good deal at that point. But, that was part of Gil Hodges doing that. He was still here controlling the ball club. In baseball today, the front office is running the show, so they're responsible for all the moves. It's not the manager anymore. He's not making the moves anymore.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show. How basically ball games are scripted these days, and the analytics guys have a lot to say about and all these scenarios are played out before the game. Like if this happens, then this is going to be our reaction move to it, and there's not much gut managing anymore.
You can't do that. Gil Hodges couldn't manage today,
right?
For the simple reason that he would run the show. He's taking care of it in the clubhouse and on the field, and you either play his way or you leave. But he made choices. Sometimes he went against the rules. He felt a certain player could do better against a certain guy. He's done better, even though it's analytically not correct. But you know what? He got away with it, and he did it, and we won games. And we would have won more pennants if Gil stayed around and doesn't pass on, because we were a good ball club. But then Yogi comes in. We had lack of control, unfortunately. Yogi's a great guy personally, socially, and a great coach. But, you put him in charge.
You weren't thrilled with some of his managing decisions. And I agree with you. One thing you mentioned, just George Stone. George Stone was, I think, 12-3 that season. And he should have pitched game six.
Right.
And
right.
You talk about it in the book, but he obviously didn't. And then game 7 became this. The Mets were up 3-2 in the 73 World Series. They should have won this. And they didn't.
Won it. And if we don't win, I believe George Stone would have won.
I think so too.
He was a great pitcher coming down. He was quick with his arm. His ball popped on you a little bit. And he won 7 games in a row coming down the stretch. I don't care what he's throwing out on the mound. If you win 7 games, who's to say you can't win the 8th?
Right.
And if he wins it, fine. You send him out on Saturday and say, George, you give me the best stuff you got. You've done it 7 times in a row. Go out on the field. We have Seaver tomorrow. Don't worry about it. If you don't succeed today, we're bringing back the best pitcher in baseball, fully rested, at the end of the season. And you can tell Tom Seaver, you only got to give me 5 tough innings.
Yep.
If you get tired, I can bring in, Matlack. I can bring in the other guys. Jerry Koosman. I can bring in other guys. I got 9 pitches.
Game 7, you can bring in anybody.
I got 9 pitches to bring in. The only guy I can't bring in because I left him out on Saturday was George Stone. Mm-hmm. Yep. I let George go on Saturday, and whatever happens, happens. If we win, we win the pennant. If we lose, we come back with the best guy, not tired. Seaver never pitched short-rested. If you look at his record over all those years, he always pitched on 4 days rest. He never shortchanged him.
Good point.
So why do it in October after the guy has had a great year? He's pitched a lot of complete games, a lot of strikeouts like he is every year, And now he's short rested on 3 days rest, and you say, give me 9 innings. What are you, crazy? Seaver's not coming out in the 5th inning. He wants to go 9 innings on every game.
Right.
That's his record. He's a great competitor. So he takes the ball. He didn't ask for the ball. Yogi asked him, who do you want to pitch? Is Seaver going to say no? Seaver will never say no. Kuzman will never say no.
Right.
Nolan Ryan would never say no. They could go out on the field with nothing. So he takes the ball and he gets knocked out. And the next thing you know, it was like the bubble burst, and we could have went home Saturday night, bought an early flight. We could have mailed it in on Sunday.
You know, people have their teams, and one of my teams is the '73 Mets, because I was at a certain age where, you know, the Mets were the only thing I cared about, and I still look back at that World Series as like, they were winning 3-2, man. They were winning 3-2.
Well, that was the decline of the Mets. If you
I know, you're right.
Right after that, they went straight down to the basement and never survived again until the new owners came in. The new owners had to come in because the front office couldn't control the situation. They didn't know what they were doing. They made a bunch of bad trades. They got rid of Seaver. They got rid of Dave Kingman. They got rid of the whole ball club.
Yep.
You know, and the next thing you know, they're in last place, giving out 5-year contracts to these young players that they got in all these trades. And you know what? You didn't have to give them 5-year contracts because they were on the first year of their contract or second year.
Yep.
So you didn't have to worry about it. You could have used the rules. You know, if you were a smart general manager, you could have used the rules and had players for 8 years, not for you know, let them get down to like 2 years before the end and then give him a 5-year contract. So now you got a guy for 7 or 8 years. If he's worth it, you're really controlling the ball club like Atlanta's doing right now.
Exactly.
They've got a great front office, and they're moving guys around, and they're controlling their own staff and their own minor league kids. They've got some good kids there. And the Mets have to do the same thing. They have to combine free agents and their own minor league club, you know, and build players up. And this is the way to build an organization. You can't just keep buying players. You're either going to run out of money or you're going to have a disaster like we had.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Braves. The Braves are the Mets' enemy for the next 5 years because of who they've signed and everything. And hopefully the Mets come up with something.
They've got some great young players. Yeah. They're going to do it. And the Mets have to do the same thing, and they've got to do it with, you know, internally.
Now, there's a couple of things before we end this, and you talk about it in your book, but we grew up in Massapequa. You and Ron Swoboda owned a restaurant in Amityville, which is right next door to Massapequa. And
correct.
We used to see the ad in the yearbook or the program, and we never got to go there because, you know, our parents didn't take us out for dinners. You know, they would always have home meals. What's it like to own a restaurant? And what did you get out of it? I mean, and why'd you pick Amityville? And, you know, and what was the whole process of how you started this restaurant? The place was called The Dugout, for those who don't know.
Well, Ronnie and I both lived in Long Island. He lived in Syosset. I lived in Farmingdale. So it was a close location for us. We got a chance to meet our fans. It was a great opportunity. We figured, you know, it was a good meeting place. And it was. It was a great restaurant. We loved it. It was just too tough to run when you're out on the road too much. You're away for 6 months. Very difficult to run an operation. So we had to give it up, unfortunately. But we enjoyed the restaurant. I enjoyed New York. The fans were great. They knew the game. When they came out there, they wanted to see us. So we had to be there. It was too time-consuming for us during our playing career. So it wasn't the right situation at the right time. But we enjoyed it. We had fun with it.
And we should say that you're still friends with Ron Swoboda. He wrote the foreword to your book.
Ronnie is a great guy. He's down in New Orleans, and his wife's doing well. She had some tough times this year, but we kept in touch, and we still see each other. I still see Art Chapsky in New York. You know, that some of the guys that were on the 69 Club are still with us, but we've lost too many of them, and that's why we love these old-timers games. Cleon comes up.
Right.
I've been friendly with Cleon Jones since 1962 at the Flamingo Hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's where we started, and we're still going strong.
Yeah, when we interviewed him, he was just, he loved the old timers game. He loved the respect that the new ownership was bringing to you guys, and it was so nice to hear that, because as we know, the Wilpons were more involved with the Brooklyn Dodgers and there's nothing wrong with that, but it is the New York Mets. Now, you retired at 34, Ed. You probably had a couple of more years in you, looking back. Am I right, or did you just feel like...
I could have played. No, I just had enough. After 18 years and being on the basement and being there for another 4 or 5 years in a row at the end, it just wasn't fun anymore, because going to the ballpark, you're eliminated by the All-Star break. It's no fun to be there with a bad ball club and not playing. I was pinch hitting. I was the best pinch hitter in baseball at the time. I'd led the league 5 years in a row, hitting over 400. I set a record. I was 17 for 35 one year. I was doing it. I was doing a great job. But on a bad ball club, how many opportunities do you get in a key situation? There are none. And by the time, if you're just pinch hitting, you're not playing the game. So it wasn't any fun. It wasn't fun. So when the game's not fun, you want to go. But I want to give credit to one gentleman that's, from the old organization. I never played for him, but Fred Wilpon was very instrumental in helping me get the doctor for my wife.
Oh, really?
And I will never forget that. He went out of his way to help me, made the phone call. We took my wife the following day after Fred got a hold of him. And you know what? It was great. And I certainly appreciate the family over there doing what they did for us.
Wow.
Nobody knew that.
Yeah.
And Fred was a gentleman. He called me and he helped me. And, you can't always reach these doctors, and you don't know all the doctors who to take care of. So the second miracle in my book, or third miracle, was my wife. And, it was Fred that was very instrumental, along with my other friend, David Dines, who was very instrumental in doing that. So I had two good people in my life that helped me with my wife, and you can never forget those things, and I never will.
No, and one more thing, and I forgot about it, and you bring it up in your book. When the Wilpons and the Doubledays, when they ended up buying the Mets, you actually put in a bid with a group to try to buy the Mets, which I totally forgot about until I read the book.
Yeah, I was there with Bob Appleknap, and we were very instrumental in it, and Bob was very interested in doing it. I had a group myself that was in baseball and had a couple of minor league clubs, but financially we were not as strong as a guy like Bob Appleknap, who was a billionaire. Right. So when he approached me, I joined his group, and we approached Lorinda DeRelay early on, and Mr. Payson, he wanted me to buy it, and he told me that the ball club was going to be for sale, and we did talk about it. We discussed it. Nothing came up. Mrs. DeRelay, she wound up picking her friends, Mr. Doubleday, and Fred Wilpont was part of that group, so that's the only reason I never got involved in it. But would have loved to take an opportunity. I would have loved to tried. I think I would have did a better job, but you know what? It is what it is. Yes,
it is. Well, Ed, we want to thank you for joining us. We've been talking to a longtime Met, 18 seasons with the Mets, Ed Kranepool. His book is The Last Miracle, My 18-Year Journey with the Amazin New York Mets, published by Triumph Books. Ed, we appreciate you coming on. It was great talking to you, and thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Oh, one more thing. When we were kids, you did a couple of cool things. You used to have these Met clinics where you would come on a back of a truck with another Met. Usually it was you. And we saw you like 3 or 4 times in we call it was summer recreation, but it was more like a camp today. And you show up and you'd give out autographs, you'd show people some hitting tips, but it was always you. So as a kid, we always it's Ed Kranepool. Yeah, right. And another time, you and Ron Swoboda showed up at our church you showed the 1969, I think it was 1969 film. And you and Ron took questions, and you didn't see players come out like that when you were a kid. Nowadays it's just, get the autograph, get the ball signed. But back then it was very organic. So as kids, You know, we were big Ed Kranepool fans just because you would show up and say hello to us.
We had fun and we built up the Mets. That's how the Mets got developed. Buddy Harrelson and myself and the guys that lived in New York, Ronnie Svoboda, all visited the little leagues, gave out a lot of trophies. To this day, I still see people that I gave trophies to, and they swear that they still have the trophies. So they had a good time doing it, and we loved it.
Great memories for sure.
Well, we appreciate Ed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed.
Take care.